Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Silverline Show on Tuesday, or that Silverline Show on Tuesday. So, I'm Quentin Bedwell, and I'm joined by
Aaron
Mr. Aaron
Humphreys?
Humphreys.
Yes, and they spelled my full name on here. The last one it did, they only got the H-U-M-P-H. No, not even the H, H-U-M-P. So I was Aaron
Well,
Hump, but that's not my full name.
Well, it's a beautiful name, Aaron.
It is. It's very pretty.
And we're streaming some of Aaron's artwork tonight, and this is what are we looking at here? What is the?
This is what page this is. This is me coloring a page from my comic Godlings. So I think this is towards the end of issue 11. I'd have to look at the actual number, but it's just me color. It's like a coloring book, so I don't know how exciting it'll be to watch me color, but I color these like coloring a coloring book, so maybe it'll be relaxing, like coloring books are relaxing the color, I guess they say.
Yeah. All right. I'm getting Facebook set up where I can see the comments, and I've got it set up, so I'll be able to check it out if anybody wants to talk to us this evening on Facebook. So, yeah, I've been doing all kinds of stuff, mainly work stuff, but I have been dabbling in some other drawing, getting some research done for an upcoming thing that is not to be discussed. So,
so we can't discuss. Okay, I think I know what you're talking. I may know what you're talking about, but that's because I'm one of the cool kids in the know.
yes, it's top secret. Top secret.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing stuff for the
Roland Man says, "Hey guys! All right, so we got it up, got it going." Brother Tim couldn't be with us this week. He is, I believe, traveling or something.
He said he was in Portland, so he's actually closer to me now than he has been, which makes me a little nervous.
Yeah.
Because we have to go. I think he said he's in Portland. Portland's closer to me than his hometown is. So I'm like, oh, okay.
And I currently reside in Texas, so we are very far apart.
Yes. And
I'm almost in the heart of Texas, so I'm very far apart from everyone that is not in Texas. When I go to see family in Mississippi, half of my trip is just getting out of Texas.
I have heard that getting out of Texas is a trip in and of itself. That I didn't realize how large that state was until somebody said it took them up to like 3-4 hours or like half a day or something just to get out of the state.
Oh, let me tell you, there is so much wide open land out here, just wide open. And you'll go through like what is supposedly a town, and it will just be like a couple buildings. It'll be a gas station and some sort of, other place of work, and then there'll be just a couple little houses here and there, and you're out of it. And it's for the first leg of my trip, it's like totally flat. It's like being in a planetarium because you can see for miles on both sides, just flat.
That is the one thing I will say. I did visit Texas with a friend, and I was amazed at how flat it was. I live in Washington State, where we have mountains. I mean, I just drive not more than 5-10 minutes. I can see Mount Hood. So we have mountains and evergreen trees. So my viewpoint is always blocked by something on the horizon, like trees or mountains, But when I went to, Texas, there's nothing blocking your view. It's almost you can see the curvature of the earth, like looking at the ocean. When you
get in West Texas, it is either super flat or it's what's called the hill country, and it's like, you're going in and out of like little canyons and stuff. But I know that when I'm leaving West Texas, getting in the middle portion or southern, it starts getting into the hill country, And as you go, it gets more and more green, and the trees get a little bit taller, but not much. But I am originally from Mississippi, and that is a place of rolling hills and green tall pines. Uh, nothing like nothing like this at all.
Yeah, Mississippi has a now the Smoky Mountains are not in Mississippi, are they? I'm thinking
No, there.
Tennessee.
I don't even know if there is a single mountain in Mississippi. I
Okay.
think the highest place in Mississippi is a mound in Natchez. That's not even a natural mound. It was built by Indians. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I remember from visiting Natchez.
Yeah, I think Tennessee is the one that has the Smoky Mountains, but I'm not.
But the pines are so tall and it's so hilly that you can only see like around you most of the time wherever
Yeah.
you are. You can't really see too far. I remember when I got to Texas though, here to where I'm at, I was at a Sonic and I had gotten out to go through some stuff in the trash, and I something was catching me on the corner of my eye, and I looked over, and it was my shadow, and it was level with me, and I was like, and I looked at where the sun was on the horizon. Craziest thing. I'd never even seen anything like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, really weird. Really weird.
Yeah, because wasn't shorter or taller, it was perfectly in size with you. Is
Yeah,
that right?
it was straight across, man. Straight across. I was like, and I just stood there, and I got back in the truck. My wife was like, What were you doing?" I was like, "I was looking at my shadow." She didn't think much about it. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty
Why
flat.
didn't she get out and look at her shadow?
She does. She is a very practical person.
She's not amazed by
I
stuff
I
like that.
married a I am a I'm the baby of my family, and
Mm.
she is the big sister of her family.
Ah, I
So
got it.
yeah, so she is the super practical one, you know, and I'm the not so practical, depending on what it is. I'm
You don't
still the
eat.
brains of the operation, but
I laugh because I've never
she
been the brains of my operation.
yeah, she won't watch this, so I could say that. But anyway, I
What?
got a new poster. I don't know if you can
Yeah, I was
tell
gonna
me.
ask that, like behind you.
Yeah, got a new yeah,
Oh, that's cool. Is that
classic.
is that Steve Ditko and stuff, or is that just a lot of different
I
artists?
don't know. I just saw it and it was on sale and I scooped it up. I don't even remember who did that. I
Because
should
sometimes
know.
they'll mix a lot of artists. I've seen them where, like, I'm like looking at an image,
Well,
like a
this one
collage of
is
heroes.
actually the classic cover to that comic. Uh, that's the cover art to it, I believe. So, and it just it screamed awesome. It was classic. I love classic DC and Marvel. I just don't really care for a lot of these the newer stuff. I mean, some of it's good, but for the most
Yeah.
part, I kind of stay away. If there's something I'm curious about, I'll get on YouTube and see what the reviews are, stuff like that. And
Most of the stuff I know happening in comics is basically through people who review them or talk about them. I know Batman married Catwoman because it was a news story. I listen to certain people talk about comics and they'll mention stuff,
yep.
but I haven't read superhero comics in years. I read a lot of independent comics, but I just haven't read. If I read any superhero comics, it's from the library, but I haven't been going to the library. I started reading Sin City again because I haven't read it in years. So I thought I'd give that a shot. And
Well, I have.
I'm
I
looking
I
at your
usually
poster. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm looking at your poster online now. I'm trying to figure who the artist is. I don't think that's Dick. I don't know. That's almost looks like Jack Kirby, but I don't know. That's a cool poster. I saw your poster online. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah, but they're
Well,
not giving
I
the artist.
should know more, but I really know only what I've been exposed to, and I some of these other guys at Silverline, I mean, you can ask them anything and they'll
They'll
know it,
know it.
especially like John Medic and all them. I don't nearly have the knowledge that they do. I mean, being able to go back issue by issue and tell you who the writer is and the artists, and I mean, they could probably even tell you the letterers and you know all that. But I know the ones that I followed. I was a '90s, '80s, '90s guy, and
Yeah.
I just the earlier comics that I had, the ones that were older than that, I got passed down to me, and so that's I gained a love for them because of that, because my older brother and because of some of his friends, they just they you didn't really collect comics way back then, or my people in my area
No.
didn't. They'd read them and throw them in a box or something, and I would get them and look at the artwork and stuff because I was always artistic. So uh, I didn't even actually think about actually collecting them and putting them in bags until heck, I guess it was probably 93, 90, or no, it's probably about 90,
And I think
91.
that really, really started. I know the collectability thing really started with the advent of a bunch of parents throwing away their kids' comic books. And, or like just throwing these away. That's why like Superman #1 and all those are so rare, because most of them, like you said, they're just tossed aside. They were just dumped. And so I think when people started figuring out the rarity, if you don't take care of these, that they'll be tossed, I think added much more of a collectability to it. So people started collecting them. But yeah, for the most part, I don't remember me collecting.
Well,
When I first started it, I think I put them in bags, but I read them. I mean, so there wasn't much collectability in them.
well, the one thing about me is even though I wasn't really aware uh, of collecting or saving things for later, I always like to keep my stuff nice and neat.
Yeah.
So thankfully, there was that. So I didn't just like throw them in a drawer or throw them in a box. I mean, I would stack them neatly and try to protect them. I didn't like, the dog ear. I did not. I never dog eared any book that I ever had. I mean, I just I don't like to. I don't like to do any of that stuff.
When I started collecting the X-Men. I mean, the first few comics I got, I didn't realize it. Because I would buy my comics from like the Plaid Pantry down the street. So if you buy them off a spinner rack, most comics are not in great condition off the spinner
Yeah,
rack.
they got that. They got that big wrinkle right there
Yeah, when people are bending them
on the
forward and
spine.
stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, so beyond that, it wasn't until I went to a comic shop for the first time that I started seeing like, well, you should put them in bags and collect them.
Yep. That
And
was me.
yeah, and I was like you. I was never into the collection to sell them again. I was into the collection of like almost collecting baseball cards or something. Like
Yep.
I wanted to know the story, and I just like the idea of having like this sort of stack or set of them. It was like putting thing in order, which I think is goes to my OCD. Like in video games, I got to collect everything. That same sort of thing. I think I have many friends who like doesn't matter what they're collecting, they just got to get it all or have that sort of
Yeah.
satisfaction of filling in all the spaces.
Well, for me, comics were absolutely 100% fun and just a
Yeah.
joy at first. I mean, and I had no ideas of collecting. I had no ideas of, oh, well, I've got to get, this one and make this whole run, and all this. And I didn't know all the writers and the artists and all that kind of stuff. I was collecting them to read them, but mostly to look at the artwork and see how they were drawing stuff. I was just so interested in that. But then I made a friend in school, and we're still friends today. And he was big into comics, and he liked comics a lot. And eventually, his dad ended up opening up a comic book store,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
so that was like my first. These are collectible. These are something you should take, special care of. Get the
Right.
the backers and the plastics, and and then I just started picking up on it from there. And then, of course, they led me to different stuff that, because you're only aware of what you pick up until somebody comes and refers you to something else, and so
Right.
through them, I went, because when I was young, I was collecting anything, I really liked GI Joe. I really liked Secret Wars, and a few of the Marvel books, and especially Spider Man. But I really wasn't exclusive, on anything. I just liked the artwork, and I wanted to see the
Yeah.
artwork and all that. But whenever we got together, me and this guy, he would tell me about Wolverine, and then I would go buy Wolverine, and he'd tell me, well, you should really, check out Amazing Spider-Man right now because they've got this going on and this other thing going on. And then it got me looking at all my older comics and really diving into those. And it actually kind of gave me a new perspective on some of my older stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember I was into some superhero. I remember some of the superheroes. I was always into what looked cool. I remember buying like Rom Space Knight. I always thought he was cool looking because I'd never seen anything like him before. I think IDW got Rom Space Knight. I don't know if they're still doing anything with it. Uh, I did get X-Men. I remember going down and I started collecting the New Warriors because it had a number one. And I knew as a kid, like, well, number one issues are important, or that's where they start a story. So I remember buying this number one. And I really enjoyed the New Warriors. That's the one I actually started collecting from the outset. I just got lucky enough that they started the series and then kept it going. And at first I was like, this is okay. But then it got really good as time went on. And I still have all my New Warriors, and I still think I have all my X-Men. Um, I just should have them all. I did have like the first appearance of like the Juggernaut and stuff, but I sold them a while ago because I didn't. They weren't in my run. I think I started collecting the X-Men at like I went back maybe as far as like when they discovered Krakoa or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and then so I was more of like I started reading the X-Men at the Fall of the Mutant storyline, which was one of my favorite storylines. And then I went backwards and forwards, like, okay, I got to get the back issues, and I got to collect what's coming out and stuff.
Well,
But a lot of
we
oh
moved out here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh no, I was just saying a lot of my taste changed. I remember I would find all sorts of random comics in stores, and I remember one was Usagi Yojimbo. I really got into like the Ninja Turtles and Usagi Yojimbo. But I also remember finding Alien Legion, which is one of my all-time favorite comics. And that is one that I actually went back years ago and got as much of it as I could. They put out some omnibuses, but she had to go back and get some individual issues and whatnot. And so I'm pretty sure I have a full run of that, but it's split between little books, big books, single issues. So you can read the whole thing, but you go between all these little books or whatever. They get it all. So,
Well, my collection, most of it is still over in Mississippi. We moved over here almost 15 years ago. It was about a year after Katrina, and I had moved all my stuff here. In about a month and a half, I hadn't unloaded my car yet, or not my car. I had a Ford Escape, and I had all my comics lined up in the back of it, and in boxes. And I just hadn't taken them out yet because when we first moved over here, we lived in a second story apartment.
yeah,
And, it was just, I procrastinated to get them out and, make the trips up the steps, over around the building and up the
right.
steps. So anyway, I come home for lunch because I live close to my work that I moved over here for. And then I was on my way back and I got hit and turned over
Oh,
and like spun down the highway. And so all those books came out. I was able to save quite a few of them, but there
yeah,
were some of them that got, I'll say, soiled, not from
yeah,
me, but from oil and stuff like that. And so I lost. I probably didn't lose more than a fifth of the collection, but it was really hard, because some of those had been with me for so long, and even though I hadn't read them in a really long time, it was just it was really
Right.
sad. I had to get rid of some, but I was able to save some of the others. They just kind of smell like oil. I don't know if they
Did
still do,
did you
but
replace any of the ones that you lost, or?
no, I didn't even try because you know, some of them were just so old. Even replacing them, yeah, it would be the same book, but it's not the same book because it wasn't mine, the one I grew up with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. That's
so
a bummer.
yeah.
I went back. I had a bunch. I sold a bunch of my collection years ago, and I just went through my collection and kept the stuff I wanted to keep because I was the guy that would just buy all sorts of random stuff. So I had all sorts of random weird comics. I just sold a bunch of stuff, and I have about maybe a box or two out in the garage still. Um, but a lot of the stuff you look at, you're like, wow, this stuff's really bad. What was I
Yeah.
thinking? Like, like I just didn't even want to look at this again. So I went through and
What was really random too, what got destroyed. So I mean, I wouldn't, there's a few that I knew that I can remember that got took out, but there was, like there was a lot of Joe comics I had, and they got took out in the whole thing. But anyway, the ones that were left, cleaned them up and fixed them back in new boxes and all that stuff. But then we moved back to Mississippi about 5 years ago, and we stayed there for about 2 years. And I just left them at that point at the house that it was my mother's house,
mm-hmm.
and I just left them there and pretty much in storage. And so,
They're still
but
there.
I've fooled around now and collected, collected a bunch of them again, newer stuff. So
I was going through and collecting like instead of reading my X-Men single issues, I was going back and collecting the omnibuses
hmm
that were put out. And there was a few strange. I'm glad I had the single issues. There was one storyline which was called the Mutant Massacre. And for some odd reason, they left an issue out of that, and it was a pretty key issue. It was like almost in the middle of the story, and it was just gone. And they left out of the omnibus. So I actually have all my comics. I just went back and grabbed those issues I had and kind of stuck them between the omnibuses so I could make a mental note of what I need to read.
why do
But
you think they did that? I mean, could
there
it have
was,
been a mistake, or could it have been something that was politically
I have no
motivated?
idea. It was really weird because it's like literally if they cut out half of like a movie or something. And I remember reading it and I was like, well, I remember there's much more. And I went back and I was like, am I missing something? And I went back and looked and like, yeah, they'd leave there was one issue that was this sort of fill-in issue that had ROM the Space Knight. And I think they left that out because IDW had gotten the rights to ROM. And so they couldn't put that issue in. It was a fill-in issue. It wasn't
Yeah.
like it contains the main story. So I was trying to think, I wonder if it had something like that. Like there was a character, and I can't think of anything, but maybe there was a character in there that had rights and they couldn't reproduce it. I don't know. So those omnibuses are collected, but not as complete. Most of them, there was only one. All the other ones seemed pretty complete, as far as I remember.
I
But it
wonder if
was
it could be
weird that they
royalty.
lost that one.
I wonder if it could be royalty issues too.
It could be. It could. And the funny thing is I remember the issue actually went for a chunk of money. I think, if I'm not mistaken, now I could be wrong about this because I'm trying to remember. It was a cover. Do you remember when like Marvel used to put like this border around the comics that would show like all these faces of heroes and they would put it around
Yep.
the main picture? It was one
Yep.
of those, and it had like Wolverine on the front or something like that, and it was kind of a key issue. I remember it going for like a decent amount of money, and that was the issue they left out. And I think in that storyline was the first appearance of either Sabretooth or the first time Sabretooth and Wolverine met. And so it was kind of like when they left it out of the omnibus, like that was kind of a key issue. That was kind of, I mean, a big deal. Because I remember Wolverine and Sabretooth met in this mutant massacre thing. They had known each other somehow. But I remember that. Now, whether that was the first appearance of Sabretooth, I don't know. But I know they met there for the first time.
Hmm.
And then that started the whole thing. But yeah, it was weird. I'm trying to think if I had any other omnibuses, but it's weird how you go back and research. Like the ROM one, I was like, because I was reading that, I was like, I remember this. Like they're up in this building and they're in the snow, and there's like Rom fought these aliens called the Diarrhas, and Storm was, destroying. And then I looked up and like, okay, that did happen. Because sometimes you wonder, like, I remember this. Was this in another series or what? But I looked it up and like, no, it was right. It was an X-Men. It just was taken out. They did give a reason for that, but the other one, I'm guessing. I have no idea. It was really a weird. It would be like if they did the Spider-Man issue and took out the first appearance of Venom.
Mm.
It was that weird, and so I don't know the rights. But then the omnibuses got weird. I remember collecting them to a certain point, and then like it was omnibus 12 or 13 in the run, just some random number. But they made very little of it for whatever reason, and now that thing goes for like hundreds of dollars. And so I just didn't even bother going down to hunt it because I didn't want to spend all that money. And I had those issues, so I could just read that if I wanted to. But it was kind of weird to think like, oh, you can get it for $20. This one's like $80. Like, why this random? Because I guess it was cut short or something. But yeah, I don't. Do you collect any of the phone book omnibuses at all? When they used to I don't think they still reproduce them.
When I discovered and I didn't know that's what they were called. I always called them the compilation issues.
Yeah, same.
The compilation books. Yeah, when I discovered those, that's kind of what I started driving toward with all of
Yeah,
my collecting. That way I could get the whole story, kind of like binge watching, a
right.
series, instead of having to worry about, am I going to get this one? Is the store that I'm shopping at going to get the next one that comes out, and so on? Am I going to get there in time before they're all taken? Kind of
Have
took
you?
away all that.
Do you collect single issues at all anymore?
Mm, only independent stuff.
Only
Um,
independent. Okay.
yeah, yeah, only independent stuff that I'm interested in. Usually, I'll give one a shot. And again, I collect by art now, so
Yeah,
I
me too.
barely follow storylines. If I want to follow a storyline, because there again, is the store that I'm shopping at going to have them? Are they going to order them next time? Because I've run
Yeah,
into that so many times where I had to stop on one, and it's just kind of frustrating. It's kind of like watching a season of something,
yeah,
and you know, well, it's not on Netflix. To get this one, you've got to go to Amazon and purchase it on Amazon, and no, well, it's on Hulu. This, I don't like that. I don't like that mess. Uh,
yeah. And also to know that you can go get it. I mean, that was, and also just for independent creators, there's a lot of time that you'll see a really cool issue one, maybe an issue two, and then they just stop.
yeah.
It's really hard. That's my biggest thing is like I love collecting independent comics, but sometimes, and I'm not talking like Image, like in the independent comics, and but I'm just always like, yeah, am I ever gonna see? Am I gonna start a storyline? It'd be really cool, and am I ever gonna see it complete? I don't know. There are a few that I collect that I know, like, okay, these guys will complete the story.
Hmm.
But a lot of them you just kind of like, no, I'll never see the end of that. But
Well,
like
I'm
you,
caught up. I just got caught up on Kalis, and man, really good, really good.
yeah,
I mean, I was thinking, hey, this is in my wheelhouse before I even started reading it. Just what I've heard of it, and then I read it, and it's really good. And I can't wait to see
they
the
have,
what
yeah,
they
they
do with
have,
it.
yeah. That's issue one and two is out.
Hmm.
Um, what was it? There was one I do like the new as far as Silverline titles, I do like the new Cat and Mouse. And I like the Divinity stuff.
Divinity.
Yeah.
Now, I've read the first Divinity. I've got the second one. I just haven't read it yet. But that's another one. Oh man, I was really. I shouldn't say, and I don't mean any offense by this, but I know that these people are veterans and they're good at what they do. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I'm really impressed every time I read these books, because just the fact that I am working alongside people who are capable of this level of storytelling. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything about their abilities or anything when I say that I'm more than impressed when I see the stuff. It's not that I was expecting junk, you know, but
Right.
it's just I expect it to be on a certain level, and then it just totally, breaks the ceiling. So I was really, I'm really excited about Kalis, which I think is going to be coming up soon. Issue number 3 for Kickstarter, uh, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong, folks, but we'll see.
Do you ever shop on the Indie Planet store? Like just
I used
like
to. I haven't in a while though.
yeah. I kind of been doing that, going through and buying a bunch of random independent comics, and there's some really cool stuff on that store. I mean, because I'm always seeing like, join back our Kickstarter, back our Kickstarter. But I wish, I guess, in social media, I'd see more and more of like, you just go buy our comic here. So like
Hmm.
for like your comic, I could just go buy it instead of backing the Kickstarter. I'm like, well, I'm not going to see it for a while. Very rarely do I see anyone just post like, this is a link to my store. Here's my stuff. Do you want to buy it or not? Which I sometimes when I see a Kickstarter, I'm like, no, I don't care. I'll wait till it comes out or
Hmm.
whatever. But yeah, I did back one series called Lead City. That's really well done, and I have the first 2 issues of that. And that's really unique artwork, and that's why I backed it. And I'm trying to think, not much else. I will go through comic shops and look for all sorts of like weird, crazy little independent books. Like you have more, because I draw comic books. I'm always curious what other people are doing. Like, how are they doing it? Right? Like,
Well, as far as the Kickstarter goes, I was backing different ones, but I would usually get in at the low price point, and usually on that level is digital. And I
yeah,
realized something after a little while. I don't really like digital. I mean, yes, it's a way to consume the product, but it just, I never knew that I didn't like to, but I just decided as I was reading one day, I wish I could just have this in my hands,
yeah. I used to read
So
a
now I just go straight for, you know, somebody I really want to back, and I
yeah,
just go ahead and go all in, at least on the 25 level or whatever, to go ahead and get the books and maybe a couple add-ons,
yeah.
Uh,
That's
so I don't even worry about the digital stuff anymore.
I used to read stuff on Cosmicology, but I'm the same way. If I had the choice to be digital or physical, it's always going to be physical for me, hands down. That's not even a choice.
And it's
Digital,
not it's not even to just put it on my shelf. I mean, I have a shelf over here with comics on it, and I like that. It's not vanity. It's just physically when I'm reading it, I just enjoy having it in my hands more.
there's
I just
there's
do.
also the idea of you're staring at a computer screen that's projecting light into your eyes. So sometimes it
Right.
gets tiring after a while reading digital.
And I'm at a
Um,
computer all day,
right.
all day.
So the
So
last thing I want to do is I'm like you, like I want to take my comic and go like sit outside or sit on the couch or sit somewhere else. I don't want to sit on my computer. I know you can read on tablets and stuff. But yeah, there's just something that's, I don't know. They try to put comics on there, but there's something where it just really doesn't work. I know a lot of people read web
Well,
comics.
to that point, I mean, I could watch. I've got 3 monitors here. I could watch a movie on my computer, but I don't because I'm too close to it. You know,
Yeah.
uh, which I am nearsighted. That seems like it would be a good thing, but I don't. I like to watch movies like away from me, or on my phone. I'll have YouTube on my phone off to the side somewhere, but it's usually at
Yeah.
least 3 or 4 feet away. That way, just where I can reach over and touch it. I
Yeah.
just don't like it up in my grill. And like you said, it's digital. You've been staring at a screen all day, and it is kind of like watching a movie or YouTube or something like that. And
There's
it's
also
just
the
too close.
Yeah, and there's also the display, the way things are presented as well. Like I'm reading Sin City. I have the single issues I bought years and years ago. Now they have a huge book of Sin City, but what's strange enough different is the old Sin City issues are printed on this very matte paper.
Hmm.
And it sort of kind of works with the solid black white line art. And then when they did this big book of Sin City, which they brought out, it was all glossy paper. Now that could be like who cares? Strangely enough, I think it actually does matter to me a little bit because I liked it. I'm reading these single issues. I'm like, yeah, this is the way I think it was meant to be, and I don't know why they made it glossy. But sometimes that's almost in a way going back to digital versus physical. Like if it's on the screen, it's all glossy and shiny and
Yeah,
bright.
I
And
think another thing too is just I don't like scrolling. I
Mhm.
just I like to be able to look at the pages, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just hard to
There's,
do that.
and I know that's, I know, and I think it could just come from where we started doing, um, on the collecting comics or whatever. Comics are always a physical medium. And there's been a few. If I will sometimes read digital if I am curious or can't find the comic. Like I had a hard time finding like this reprint of the Trekker. I wanted to read the Ron Randall's, I think it's Ron Randall, Trekker series, and so I read that digitally, just to check it out. And there's been a few comics that I found, but there's some comics you find digital, they don't make physical copies. So I mean, you do find digital stuff that you'll never. But that's why I like Indie Planet because you can find all sorts of stuff, and then you can either get it digital or you can print it, and that's everything on there, which I think is a really cool concept. Like if you want, and I always print, like I get a big stack of stuff, and then I print it and have like like a few days later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I ordered comics, and I get a big stack of comics and books. But yeah, if I can always do physical, I always try to. And it seems like, now, do you get single issues through Kickstarter, or do you usually are more apt to go for graphic novels or something bigger?
Uh, well, I've just gotten single issues because it's been mostly all Silverline.
Yeah,
Usually the other things that I've backed, I don't really. They were okay, but just not enough to make me go back.
yeah,
Just okay, not enough for me to put up with the trouble of doing it. But everything Silverline puts out, and so that's what I get is whatever they send out because I know that if I back them, it's done, or back us. I say them, but if I
yeah.
back us, I know that it's done, and I know the creators, and I know that there will be another one coming in a decent
Right.
amount of time, so I don't have to worry. So now I don't really much look at others. Now, if I'm in a store, like I went to the comic store where I got this poster,
Hmm.
and man, I might go in there and just go randomly, just depending on what strikes my eye, and I pick it up. Look, I always look at the cover, look at the inside, you know, because that's what I'm buying it for. Really, is the visual, and if it really gets me, then I'll buy it. But
Usually, and
usually just a study. It's not really, because I'm following some storyline or something. I don't even try to do that anymore. It's too frustrating sometimes.
it is. I've been getting into a lot of European comics because the artwork is so well done. I read some of them. Europeans have a very different storytelling sensibility. Sometimes to what I can't even figure out what's going on. I remember reading one with this girl. I think she died in the story, and when she fell, like her body like split into otters.
Hmm.
And when you're like, what is going on? They go, oh, that just happens. When she dies, she splits into otter, and then she gets resurrected somehow. So I was like, wait,
Hmm.
what? But the artwork in those books are just fantastic. I mean, artists from Europe are they take their time, but it's different. I don't think they put monthly books out. They put like books out when they're done. So it's a different uh sort of
So you get it
market
when
than
it's
we do.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, like even manga, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, I think like the manga, the big Shonen Jump books, I think they come out every week.
Hmm.
I think there's one a week. I think it's not just one a month. I think it's one a week. And so I think they put like those big books out one a week, but I could be wrong. I know they produce a ton of work very fast over there in Japan, but I think it's that, yeah, because I mean it's like, and I think each one's like a 24-page black and white, but they have assistants, so they split their artwork up even more than we do. So I know, like, I'm a big fan of Akira and stuff like that. And I know I've heard that when he was drawing Akira, he had a guy that would sit there and draw the buildings, and then he would draw the characters. And so they'll actually just split up the artwork itself to draw different components. Like, you draw cars, you draw buildings, you draw this, and they all work in this factory line to get the book done. Unlike America, who's like letterer, colorist, artist,
Yeah,
they split them up that way,
I
which I
think
always
that's
find cool.
amazing. Which I have heard some of the image people talk about how, yeah, especially like Jim Lee, him and Portico, is that his
Batash
name?
at the Batashir, I think. And we're so sorry for destroying your name, sir. Um,
Yes, forgive us. But anyway, he would like do one of them would do the layouts, and they would kind of switch up. And one of them would do the layouts, and sometimes one of them would do the pencils, one would do the inks. Uh, whatever made it go faster.
yeah,
And they would switch up all throughout the whole thing. I thought that was pretty interesting. Uh,
yeah. It's as long as you get the work. Strangely enough, especially when it comes to commercial art, and this is something for all my artist friends out there, it usually doesn't matter how you do it. So if you feel like you can do it easier, for instance,
mhm,
when I storyboard, like if they need a car, I'll just trace over an image of a car because
mhm,
no one's going to see the storyboard besides me and whoever's making the show or, the video, whatever. So there's no reason. So it comes to a point where you just kind of like, yeah, but I can draw a car. And it's like, they don't care. They just need to get it done. So yeah, there's lots of cheats you can do. I mean, I found out that when they were drawing the Millennium Falcon in the Star Wars comics, because I drew the Millennium Falcon like a few years ago, and I tried to draw it freehand. It took me like a week to do the whole thing. It was crazy because I kept getting the proportion drawing and I break it up, and I got pretty close with it. But then after doing a week, I'm like, how do people who draw this in the comic, how do they do it? I mean, that's just, I was looking in the comic and see multiple panels of Millennium Falcon flying. I'm like, there's just no way. And it's like, well, yeah, they use 3D models. It's a 3D model. And I'm like, "Ah, well, that makes sense." And then whether they draw over the top of it or not, I don't know, or if it's just they
mhm.
render it to look like a cartoon. But yeah, don't, it's the end product. As long as it looks good, nobody really cares how you got there.
Yeah.
So yeah, swallow your
Well, you'd
pride.
have to use, when I used to airbrush, and this has been
Oh yeah, I remember
years,
airbrushing.
years ago. Airbrushing, for those who may watch this and don't know, there is freehand airbrushing. There, quite a bit of it is freehand airbrushing. But if you pick a stock design off the wall, there's going to be stencils involved to
Hmm.
speed the process along. Because when you've got a line of people waiting, they don't have time for you to be getting all artist on it. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have time for all that. You have to do whatever streamlines the process. And the thing about airbrushing anyway is a huge portion of it. Airbrush has overspray. So sometimes you
Hmm.
have to use stencils for certain things. You can't just, freehand everything. And so, whatever works gets it out. Now, I do think there's a definite limit. I know there's been artists in the past that got caught, copying stuff a little too close or tracing stuff a little
Yeah.
t- too much. There's that. Uh, but like right now, I'm doing some period piece stuff, and I'm pulling down a lot of pictures of different stuff, and some of those I'm gonna trace, some of them I'm gonna compile and flip around and draw a little bit here, and then put this other picture in back there, and
Yeah.
maybe even copy it. If it doesn't look quite right, maybe I want to turn a building a little bit. I'll do that. You
It's one of
just
those
whatever
things.
gets you through it.
Yeah. Especially if you got a lot of, especially if you're doing a comic book where you got to get it done on time. There's certain, and also use reference. I know a lot of people don't use reference. Every time I draw something, I know I don't know what it looks like. I put a lot of images together and like create, I guess, like just like an image sheet, and I actually print it out of my computer and just
Hmm.
have it near me. But I do that stuff all the time. So yeah, look at reference
Well,
all the
there's
time.
some people that once they found out about the airbrush, and they were like, "Oh, he uses stencils."
Which is
Uh,
so weird because most,
that's part of it. You can't
yeah,
airbrush without stencils. You know,
yeah,
there's stencils is part of the process. I mean, aside from just making it faster, that's part of the process. And you know, some people, I've heard of people in comics who they draw like a character's head in every different angle that they can draw it before they even do anything else, and they just pull that over.
yeah,
And some people think they call it cheating. Well, there was a show that we had several back that they were talking about this very thing. It's not cheating if you drew it. Just
yeah.
because you reuse some stuff. Now, granted, it's going to have to upsize and downsize, so they're going to have to make modifications to it.
And
Uh,
also, too, if you use the image too much, people can, okay, I've seen this image before. Um, that bothers some people. Other people it doesn't. I love
well,
Jim.
that's where I say you need to have plenty of variety if you're going to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, don't be a dummy. Don't be using the same thing
over and
multiple
over.
times within
Yeah,
6 pages, 7 pages, or even in the same book. Uh, because I mean, yeah, you want it to be interesting. You don't want to look like you cheated through, fudged on everything. Holy moly! There's got to be some element, or else you can't really grow and expand.
exactly.
And I'm a real firm believer in that. Just doing stuff sometimes just because pushing just for the fact that hey, I've never done this kind of thing before, so I want to do it now.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times doing something as innocuous as a burned out building will translate later into other stuff. I'll just use this kind of technique on that, and
yeah.
so on.
And there's a lot of too where sorry caught me well, I tell like students who are talking like, how do I get better? And I always tell them to draw outside their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Which is like, if I can't draw a card, I'm like, then you should just sit around and draw cards. And part of that is just so you can get used to doing it and break it. Because I have seen artists. There was a few artists I knew in school. There was one who was really good at drawing beautiful women, and that's all he did. And so when he finally got into a class where he had to draw other things, he just fell apart
Hmm.
because he was a one trick pony, and you really got to be able to draw all things. And it's not too hard. I mean, most stuff is drawn the same way. I mean,
Yeah, I
um,
think it's really, really interesting to see an artist's work where they know how to do some stuff really super, super duper good. And then
yeah,
there's other stuff that they've never really done. So this looks like pro artist, this part. And this other part over here looks like, somebody who's not really been doing it very long got
yeah,
in and, put a rifle, in his hand. So anyway, yeah, so I do. That's what I try to do. And luckily, I've been fortunate enough to be in the screen printing
yeah,
business since I was 15, on and off, on and off. But I had that forced me to draw everything from ducks to skitters, backhoes, and
yeah,
18 wheelers, and you know. And not only draw them one certain way, like customers are really particular. Well, we wanted a little more cartoon, so
yep,
we're thinking WB here. Here on this one, think a little more Hanna Barbera. You know, oh, we want this one super realistic, inked, and then there's been those that we want it painted, so I have to paint it. And uh, doing mascots. I wish I could do mascots all the time because mascots are a lot like superheroes. But
yeah. And you can put them all sorts of cool poses and stuff too. So that's a
yeah,
win.
but I have to do stuff like flowers. I would never do flowers if it was just up to me.
Yeah,
Uh, stuff like that. I mean, but some people come up and they want particular flowers because we're doing a design for a group of people who have like a 5K run that is all about these flowers, and it's for this flower place. So if you mess up those flowers, pal, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
It's a blue bonnet, and it better look like a blue bonnet. For any of the blue bonnet aficionados out there that's going to look at it and say, "Wait a minute, that's not a blue bonnet,"
Oh yeah.
you have to do it and do it right the first time.
I had a project from Alaska where he put in this flower from Alaska, and it was a very unique, specific flower. But he sent it to me. It wasn't super hard, but it was like you had the research. I mean, you can't just draw a random flower. I mean, it
Right.
was definitely unique looking. Like, okay, this is and it was a flower that was specific to that area, or at least a flower that they used a lot in that area. But yeah, that's the
Car
thing. And
shows, same thing. If they give you a picture of a 56 Bel Air, you better do a 56 Bel Air. If they say they want a 54, you better do some research,
yeah,
and it better be the right one because they're going to know and they're going to point it out, even if it is nothing more than a few little cosmetic pieces on the tail. That tail is too tall to be a 56. They're gonna they're gonna hit you on it, and with every right. It's what they do.
yeah,
It's what they're interested in. It's what they love. And if you don't give it your due diligence, then you're just crapping on it. And you can't do
yeah.
that.
And clients will point out the weirdest stuff. At a client looked at a
Yeah.
background and it was like, oh, look at all this detail. And there's this little coffee mug I just added in for fun. And he saw it and he's like, no, we can't have the coffee mug. And I'm like, really? Like, it was just like, it
Mhm.
is weird what clients would zero in on. And I've learned dealing with enough clients that the thing you think they may have a problem with, they usually don't. It's some other thing you didn't even think of that they'll have a problem with, or
Yeah.
that it's not working. And it's like, so I just do my best and just expect them to have all sorts of different opinions and whatnot.
Yep.
So it's pretty crazy. The same thing, it is funny. Every artist I talk to doesn't like drawing backgrounds. Do you like drawing backgrounds?
Well, I know I've heard people say they absolutely love doing backgrounds. I
Yeah.
do. I do not. Now I like the challenge of it, and a lot of times I'm fighting trying not to do a background somehow. But sometimes I look at a piece and I'm just like, this has got to have a background,
Right.
and so I drop the hammer and just do it, and but it's not something that I like to do. It depends. It depends on what the background is a lot of times. But
Just out of
sometimes I've made it really hard on myself because
Yeah.
I wasn't satisfied until I put this kind of background on it, and I didn't fudge it with silhouettes and stuff like that. I actually went in and did the work, and did the lines and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I've always didn't mind. I started drawing backgrounds, and I like drawing backgrounds. But I understand if background's not sometimes the most exciting. But I usually just in my head I made it exciting by creating some sort of history behind what I'm doing. So if
hmm
I'm drawing some sort of trees or whatever, in my head it's like, yeah, but these trees have like maybe they've been here since the Stone Age, and they say, I don't know, just add nuances. You can add all sorts of interesting things to the background. You just get creative stuff that may not really pertain to the story per se, but stuff that might be kind of interesting to give it a sense of place and time.
yeah,
But yeah, I know people will go. I remember Mike Mignola talking about his entire goal in comics was to not draw cars. He hated drawing cars, so it
yeah.
was like everything. He's like, I remember him even saying like he would get offered assignments and he'd be like, "No, that has a lot of cars in it." Like
I
that
know.
was his.
Yeah, I know Jim Lee's that way on horses. He
Oh,
is.
really?
He said that he does not like doing horses. He has the most problems with horses. As far as tech goes or anything mechanical, he's good with it because
Yeah.
he has his certain way of doing it. But he has said he does not like doing
That's
horses.
interesting. I've
Hmm.
never heard that, but yeah, it happens. I'm trying to think. I have a hard time drawing car wheels. I could draw the body and frame, but sometimes, especially if the wheel is turned at an angle, that I will almost just trace it. I will just give up and like I will trace this circle to get the shape right.
Well, even
Um,
though I don't particularly like to do backgrounds, if you look at some of the stuff I've done, you'll notice there's a background in just about every panel.
yeah,
There's something, and that's because I don't. Even though I know word bubbles are going there, a lot of times I don't like that empty space. Here you've got all this going on, and then there's all this empty space, and you know, I know that you can get by with it. I know that you can do the establishing shot and kind of show where everybody is and what's going on, and then you don't have to do it again.
yeah.
But for me, I have to have something back there just to make the box pop.
And I
Uh,
will do that too. I know generally like, and I don't mind. I expect a lot of my backgrounds will be covered up by word balloons and dialogues. I don't mind it, but like you, I don't
I don't
necessarily
either.
always know exactly where they're going to put the balloon. So
Hmm.
trying to guess, no, I'm just going to draw a background and you can cover up what you see fit.
Well, my
Um,
thing is this: a page for me, whenever I complete it, it has to look good like it is. I don't
right,
like before any words get on it. Like if I pencil on the page, it's got to look good enough that if somebody were to buy just the pencils of it, which I don't pencil that much. I just go straight to inks now. But
yeah,
those inks have to look like, this could hang on a wall and it looks all composed right, and it looks, the blacks are all fluid and everything's meshing. I just have to have that. It's an OCD thing, and I know it's bad, but
no, I mean, and it's also probably like more of a a style of your art too. So,
yeah.
but yeah, a lot of times I've been trying to focus more on acting, which may be to my detriment or benefit. We'll see how it goes.
Now, see
I'm
that
not.
I love to do. I love to do the acting because it's such a challenge.
It
It is
is.
such a challenge.
And sometimes I always feel like I should put in more, stuff at crazy angles or whatever. Like, is this interesting? Just always using your basic sort of straight on shot. But there's a part of me like I want the reader to kind of forget about the art a little bit. I want them to get it. I want it to be clear enough that they can just see it and go. That they don't really need to worry about um the trying to figure it out. And I've just kind of learned like the simpler the better. So
Yeah.
I kind of quit doing that, but it depends on the story, too.
Well, and there's a formula, you know, to the angles and the
Right,
shots. If you want the box to exude or the panel to exude like the character having power, then you have this kind of angle. And if you want them to
right.
look like they're powerless, you have this angle. And if you want to, I am not there yet. I'm aware of that, but I do mostly just what looks good to me, and I don't really
Yeah,
follow a formula. Sometimes whenever I'm reading a script, I will most of the time I will get an idea in my head, and usually I try to work that however I can to make that work because that's what's going to be the best usually.
yeah.
I hate getting stumped on stuff, that takes me a lot longer than it should. And here's this panel that could have been done a lot quicker, but I've tried to do something that was out of my
Different or unique.
wheelhouse. Yeah.
I started realizing what I started. I would like, yeah, I would try to do all these crazy things sometimes, and either I found out that either I was at the time wasn't good enough, was confusing the reader, or that the reader was reading so fast they didn't even care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if they just I think it was the how fast I saw people read my stories. Even if you add a lot of dialogue, people just read comics fast. And so you just go like, wow, I put all that work and hours into it, and you read my comic in like 5 minutes flat.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like, well, okay, then I'm not gonna put like as much effort in the detail in the art. Like I'm gonna make the art function and be what it needs to be for the book, but I'm not going to try to do these impressive things because it seems like either I'm not good enough to pull it off, or the people reading it just don't seem to care. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, with me, it has my biggest thing is it just has to pass. I'm not really even thinking about uh, what people are gonna feel like when they see it. I'm thinking about, can I let this go? Is
yeah,
this something that I'm happy with, and uh, do it like that? If I didn't care that much, I probably wouldn't be that way. But if I was just strictly a let's move the story on type thing, let's just get finished, let's get done. But it has to get through me before it gets to anybody else. And it's not that I'm trying to protect my name as an artist or any of that kind of
right.
stuff. And I just, that won't come from Quentin Bedwell. you know,
I think
it's not
there's a
like that. It's like, man, this just looks like crap, and I want to
yeah.
change it, and I'm gonna change it. It just doesn't pass my muster with me. So.
I've had people. This has always been sometimes my problem with working with other artists is I get kind of like not super. I mean, I've seen some artists that have done stuff, but I remember I did this really cool drawing, and he gave it to this guy to paint, and he just painted over all the detail and just made it like this chiaroscuro where it's like this one little bright dot. And I'm like, yeah, you just took my all that work I did and you just completely painted over the top of it, because they do that's all he knew how to do or
Hmm.
wanted. And so I have had artists that have worked on my stuff that I do get picky because I have like not a certain image, but there's certain things that I consider important that I do my art for specific. Like strangely enough, one of the things I do is noses. I try to give people distinct noses because
Hmm.
strangely enough, it is a pretty big thing on somebody's face. Well, these characters don't have noses, but they usually a pretty distinct thing on a face. So I actually try to make each one a little distinct so it's recognizable, not just your basic sort of hint of a nose. And so when I see I had a few artists that have messed up my nose, and I'm like, no, that's kind of important. There's certain other things like, okay, I can let that go. But face is the one thing I get picky about because that's what people are looking at. They're always going to look at faces.
Hmm.
That's human nature. We look at eyes. We look at faces. So if you keep messing up the face, I'm going to be like, okay, we either can't work together. You're going to have to follow my lead on this one.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm not super, super duper. Everything I just said a while ago makes it sound like brood over every panel. It's not
yeah,
like
me,
that. It's not
no,
like that. I mean, there is a point, and there's some panels that just aren't gonna, because they're a transitional panel or they're
yeah,
a dialogue panel, they're just not gonna look, great. I mean, the guy's talking, for goodness sake. I mean, so you can't just have him doing stuff all the time, like when he's talking. And
yeah,
there's, but I mean, there's some things, that I spend a little more time on than what
but
I should. But as far as, uh, the other stuff, people inking over my stuff, a lot of times I don't mind seeing it just because,
yeah,
it gives me a fresh take on my own work. Because a lot of times, I don't know about you, but sometimes I can't really tell. I mean, I'm doing it, but there's some that just get by me, and I can't really tell if it's good or not, or I think it looks good at the moment, but then I look back at it and it's the next day, and that's why I decided, after I finish a page, that I'm going to give it a day and then look at it the next day, and with fresh eyes before I send it. That
yeah,
way, I can point out anything that I might have missed. Sometimes I
yeah,
just like I've got some of my stuff being colored. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see what it comes out as, just so I can see it again with new eyes. Somebody else's take with the stuff.
yeah.
Uh,
I really there's a some people have inked my stuff that I really like. And then there's some inks that I just like, and I'm usually pretty lenient. I'm like, yeah, as long as it's clear, but there's some that I'm like, no, no, that's not gonna happen. I usually am not too picky about art, but I will say, like you, if you spend a lot of time making your art and somebody just comes in, basically, it's not so much you're not talented, is I've seen a lot of people who don't take the time or patience to do it right, if that makes sense. I see a lot of people who've done stuff over my stuff, and it seems like it's in a hurry. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I didn't spend all these hours, so you can just scribble over and be like, I'm done. I got it done in like an hour because I'm so fast. Like, yeah, but it doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pet peeve. Like, if I'm going to spend all this time on doing it, then I kind of expect equal time or effort put in.
Well, I
Um,
think what needs to happen is I need to probably experience somebody not doing well on mine. I haven't had it yet, or else I'm just a shill, and
yeah,
don't really care. But I can see where you're going, and I can see how that would be frustrating if somebody that just totally ruined what, or like you would feel like it ruined
yeah,
the work that you put in, made something beautiful into something ugly.
yeah. And so it's like, this is why I know a lot of people who, complain about, like, James Cameron, for one, that he is, and directors like him that are very picky. I'm like, yeah, but he wants people working on that project that had the same fire that he has. Even though it's his project, he wants that. He doesn't want somebody who's just in it to collect a paycheck, because then it happens. I mean, man, if you find it's almost like that sort of when you're in school and you all have to do a group project, there's always somebody who doesn't step up and do any of the group project. And it's almost like that same sort of concept. And so, yeah, I've had that happen to me before, even at another school, when the guy painted the picture. And I've had some other stuff, and some of the stuff I just had to let go and be like, okay, there's nothing I can do about it. Um, I learned to separate myself from a lot of client work early on. As long as the client's happy with it, great, I guess. But I've had people do stuff with my stuff. I've had, like, I draw I remember I did a video with animals, and I'm like, okay, I set it up, and so you know how to animate it. And she didn't know how to animate animals. It looked like the dog was walking with broken legs. And I'm like, oh, it's not really a reflection of my art, but it's certainly not making me shine. So it's like, so yeah, and I am pretty lenient.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can do it, but artists sometimes can be some of the laziest people in the world, and I will admit uh, that I've met many, and that I also have a problem with, because it's like I'm not lazy, so I see somebody who just phones it in. It's like, no, we're not doing that. You got to put the
Yeah.
same effort as me.
I'm kind of a noob as well. I mean, not a noob as far as art, but as far as like doing comics.
Yeah,
I've done every other kind of. I've done every other kind of art, and I think I am still, and this will probably be perpetually the case. I'm still learning, as far as, and I may loosen up a little bit as far as my panels go, and I'm thinking maybe eventually I will, and I'll see what is important and what is not to speed me up. But that's what I'm always kind of working on is speed, trying to, but at the same time have a good quality and
right,
not getting too married to stuff. I know at my job daily I do stuff, and you just can't get married to the first version of stuff. A lot of times, there's a lot
yeah,
of changes, a lot of and sometimes it's just ridiculous things. You do something absolutely what you feel like, and what anybody around you that would tell you if it wasn't thinks is amazing as well. And then the customer gets it and they want to change it.
yeah,
Could you move him about a quarter turn? It's like I'm not animating here. I'm not an animator. That means I'm gonna
yeah,
have to go back to the drawing board and totally redraw it. But I mean, I would never say that to them. I mean, they're the customer. They,
right,
if they want it different, they want it different. And it just comes along with the territory.
I have heard when it comes to clients, I love all you clients to death. You're my bread and butter, but man, some leave it to a client to pick out the most generic, boring idea out of a sample of ideas you show him. You can always show him amazing ideas, and he's like, "I want this." And I was like, "Yeah, we kind of figured." It gets to the point that I usually know what idea somebody's going to choose, and I just prepared for it. So, but sometimes they get to do cool stuff, but most of the time it's like, no, let's go with this simple, boring thing. And I'm like, whatever. That's when I learned I had to divorce myself from my client work in that way, and that whatever the client wants, it's up to him. Uh,
yeah.
because if you get too involved, I mean, you don't want to ever argue with the client that this is what they should have. I just usually always tell them, like, whatever you want, just let me know. I'll draw it.
Well, I've done and seen done some pretty just stellar work that when the customer got it, I don't, I've never really been able to decide in all the years that I've been doing it if it was, do they just want to change this amazing thing that is everything that they asked for and more? Do they want to change it because they want to make it their own?
I
It's
think,
something you did and not them, or is it? Do they really don't? Do they really not think it looks good, or you know what I'm saying? I mean, I
yeah,
wonder.
like because you do some amazing stuff. And I've done some amazing things. I've seen people do amazing work, and then people come in and want all this other stuff, and I'm just like, why? This is something I've dealt with, and I think there is always room for an art director to keep artists under control. An art director's
Mhm.
job to keep it flowing. But I have noticed and heard that most of the time, when art directors let a group of artists just kind of work together and kind of explore on their own, they get much better results. And sometimes make customers happy.
Yeah.
And I've encountered that before. Because sometimes artists will think and do different things you never even thought of, and it's like, oh, that's amazing. And sometimes I will always put in I generally know, you work enough in the field, you generally know what a client's going for. But I always, just for fun, throw in something that I think would be cool. It never usually gets picked, but hey, at least I gave it a shot, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's they want it very simple, very straight on. But this is just when your clients for the most part are not artists. They just saw something that they think is cool, and they basically just want that.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
this is what I discovered in concept art, because I was going, oh, I'd be a concept artist, I could draw these really cool things. And then you just find out really quick, it's like, no, they basically want the Nostromo from Aliens, but just in a different color. And it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not really concept art. It's like, we don't care. It's going to sell. And it's nothing to do with, it's just the fact that the people making the movie are a bunch of executives. They're not artists. They're money makers. And so they just know, like, look, the Nostromo from Aliens, that was a cool thing. Like this, so like the Millennium Falcon sells. Make something Millennium Falcon because they like that, and so they'll like this. And of course, I've had many arguments with many people in charge uh, that, if you make something just like Star Wars, you're not going to steal Star Wars fans. This was like his big thing. If I make something that looks like Star Wars and do that, they will they will go from Star Wars. Not that they will give up Star Wars, but they'll like it because it's like Star Wars. I'm like, that rarely ever happens. People who like Star Wars just like Star Wars. People who,
Yep.
it's not like they're going like, well, I want to like Star Wars and everything that looks and feels like Star Wars. Like, no, they just want to like Star Wars. This is why it's so much, for all the artists out there, it's so much easier. Just make up your own stuff and do your own thing. If you're trying to copy somebody else, most people don't like it a copy, and if it's too close, they don't care. They'll just
Well,
stick
that's
with what they
that's kind of
like.
the thing that I got into. Was I started doing like how I would do certain heroes, because I would, even
Yeah,
though some of them were good, I would be a little disappointed, and I wish they would have done this or done that.
yeah,
And but I started doing so many little pinups and stuff of how I would do them and all that kind of stuff, and I realized I was putting a lot of work into somebody else's IP, somebody else's stuff.
yeah.
And so I started tinkering around with the idea of, making my own stuff. And so that's kind of, what I did for years is just kind of tinkered around, did my own stuff.
And I know that, like, for a lot, like, like even people who do fan art, like, it's an easy sell to draw Spider-Man or Captain America or Harry Potter or something, and you'll probably get a sale because they're a fan of that and they like your picture. But that's your
Mhm.
limit. You can't go beyond that. If you make something your own that takes off, then the sky it's just limitless. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can try to do with it. And it goes from playing the long game to the short game. I mean, I could sit there, make fan art, and probably sell a decent amount, but I know that would all I would be doing was just making fan art.
I did have a guy tell me one time, and I had never really thought about it, but it was true. Uh, and this is, I think it's pretty good advice. Maybe not for everybody, but he had said, and this guy did chibis. Whenever he would set up at a
Oh yeah,
con, he would do chibis, and they're really cool. But he said, if you do the mainstream stuff and you have plenty of that available, then whenever you do your stuff, they're more apt to look at it because you've done this and you've kind of
yeah,
oohed and awed them a little bit, so I think that's pretty good advice. I mean, if you want to do it, but if you don't want to do it, that's fine too.
yeah.
Is the way I
I
see it.
don't think there's anything wrong with doing fan art. Personally have been drawing my stuff for so many years that I get personally really bored drawing somebody's art, other
Hmm.
idea, and the reason is because it blocks my creativity. I'm a big fan of Judge Dredd, right? If I do
Hmm.
Judge Dredd, it'd be fun, but I can't redesign Judge Dredd. I can't do something new. I just put him and try to put him in a pose and draw Judge Dredd. That
Yeah.
gets boring after a while. That kind of just like, well, okay, I just like I remember I've tried many a time like I'm just gonna draw a picture of Spider-Man and I get like halfway through and I'm just like I just don't care. I don't know
Yeah.
why. It
That
just
usually
blocks that
happens when I'm
creativity.
hitting the webs, and then I'm like, I want to draw something of my own.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of these things. Yeah, the webs definitely. But yeah, I get bored drawing other people's stuff and I definitely see my art definitely shines more in my own stuff than my if I've done fan art pieces and they're okay. Um I my style doesn't always contribute uh to the style that is good for all of these like superheroes and stuff. Um but I've had like I will admit that when I do fan art stuff for a lot of stuff that people like don't see a lot of. Like I do a lot of Alien and Predator stuff because I like Aliens and Predator, and I'm surprised how rarely people do those.
Hmm.
Which it's hard to find. I mean, you find tons of superheroes, but just finding all these others. I had a Predator fighting Alien versus Predator one I did, and that's one of the most popular ones because people are like, oh yeah, I love that. Just the and it's not like it hasn't been done, and we have a movie of it. But you would think more people would do it, and they just don't. And so it's like, okay, so always you kind of do the. I mean, I did He-Man, Master of the Universe. I'd sold a few of those. I get a lot of dads walking by my booth, going like, talking to their son. That's what your dad used to watch, and then the son would be like, whatever, dad, and walk on. But yeah, so a little nostalgic for that. And I quit doing fan art. I did some. I still sell those out my booth if you want. And when they're done, they're gone. They're gone. I'm just trying to sell out. But I just much rather draw my own stuff. I just want to be able to provide something that people can't get anywhere else, and
Hmm.
that they want to come back for. Um, and I will admit, you do take a bigger risk because your stuff doesn't register with people. Then yeah, they may just ignore it. But if it does connect, then you got something going. I remember there was an artist years ago, and the fact that he attempted this was just he was a relatively famous artist, and he did chibi versions of all like Alien, Predator, Superman, whatever, little kid versions, and he decided to kickstart this book of all of these stuff he'd done, these fan arts. He's like, I'm going to collect them in a book and kickstart it, and everyone's going like, well, this is a lawsuit coming. And within like 3 days,
Hmm.
there was a cease and desist. And it's like, well, yeah, because he made a ton of money off it.
Hmm.
Whether or not it was for the art or for the property, I don't know. But he literally, I do remember an interview that he asked him. He's like, well, could I at least keep the money that I've earned so far? And it's like, no, you you don't understand this. You get no money. You cannot. earn any money off this property. And the fact that I was weird that even I mean, I was just sitting there going like, why would you even attempt this? I
Yeah.
mean, all the effort
Yeah.
and stuff you put into doing the Kickstarter, getting it together, all that was literally undermined by the fact that it was all licensed properties.
Yeah.
It was just, I'm like, you were defeated before you even started. And,
Mm.
and the fact that he actually did a video. Oh, I can't believe blah, 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 did this and was kind of complaining about it. And I'm like, you have no room to complain. The law is very, very clear on this. It's not like you didn't know this was going to happen. And he even said one of his friends was like, I wouldn't do it, dude. And he just, I'm going to do it anyways. I don't know if maybe he felt like he was going to get under the radar or whatever. But he made tons of money. He's going into like a few thousand. I'm doing great. And then, yeah, they just took it all away. This stuff to me is I never know, like, are they doing it because I'm a good artist? Are they doing it because they like cute, pictures of their favorite characters?
Well, as badly as I hate to say it, as far as that guy goes, even though these are companies, and you could say, easily, well, they have a lot of money, and I am, this
Yeah.
guy's just kind of trying to make it, you really had to treat those companies with their IPs as if they were a person,
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, who wants their stuff to be stole? I know I don't. I
Right.
know years ago I did some when I was digital painting, uh, really dibble dabbling into that. I did several pictures, and one of them was a Doctor Fate, and I kind of
Mm-hmm.
reimagined his costume. This is what I was talking about, you know,
Yeah.
updating stuff the way I would do it. Well, anyway, I did that, and people had told me, "Hey, man, you ought to put this on MySpace." That tells you about how long ago this was. So I did, and and I wasn't real internet savvy or any of that kind of stuff at the time, and
Yeah.
uh, probably about 2 years later, my stuff starts popping up everywhere. And then I did an image search, and not all of them, but this particular one, the Doctor Fate, was the worst one. It was just page after page after page where this thing was showing up. I mean, it was in Russia, it was in any
Yeah.
kind of article that had Doctor Fate against Doctor Strange. You know, they would have several different pictures throughout their article, and one of them would be my picture.
No
Because
money, no
nothing,
recognition. Yeah.
nothing. A lot of sometimes my name would be cut off, sometimes it wouldn't be. Uh, and it was. It was flattering at first, but then it was like, man, this thing has been everywhere now these 2 years. I haven't even been aware of it, and
Yeah.
I will see nothing from this.
No.
I don't have any clout. Hey, this is the guy that did the Doctor Fate that looked so cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even if you don't make money out of it, the fact that people be like, dude, this guy, he did Dr. Fate. Dude, I want you to draw
I've
this. Like,
never
even
seen
that.
Doctor Fate like. Yeah, I've never seen Doctor Fate like that.
Yeah.
That would have been cool, but that is unfortunately not going to happen because.
There's a few different ways you could do it. One, protect, you could do the watermark, which watermarks are kind of cheesy. The best way to just protect your artwork is just always make sure everything's at 72 DPI or lower. So
Yeah.
when you publish it, it's going to look like crap, but they reprint it. It's like, ha, 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 ha.
But
So you can't, like, push it back up.
the thing that's amazing about this entire thing, and this is pre Marvel movies,
Hmm.
is since I did that and I updated it, made it look more realistic, like if it was in a movie. I want to say I did it around the time of X-Men, one of the X-Men movies. I can't remember,
Okay.
but anyway. But now, like, there's even a figure coming out of Todd McFarlane, which I'm not saying he stole anything of mine, but I'm saying that picture, you could see the derivative coming
Right.
from that picture. And
And
he's been on shows, and his costume's been redesigned, and it may be coincidence, but nobody had done it before I did, because I would
right.
have saw it. But it kicked off. You could say that it had no bearing on it, but at the same time, before I did it, I had never seen anything like it, and now I see everything like it.
That's strange. Like I said, I haven't done a lot of fan art. It's strange to me if people were taking my art and I saw it was used everywhere. I was like, well, one, what do you like about it? Because it'd be my own original stuff. So I'd be like, wait, what? I don't know what I'd feel. I'm sure my art has been used places. Maybe it's better if I don't know what doesn't, know, like kill me or whatever, sort of thing. I don't know. But the Dr. Fate, it's for you. I mean, it was like that's a chance just to get kind of known. Oh, you're the guy that did Dr. Fate. I
Yeah.
mean, somebody could have hired you, like, oh, we should hire this guy to redesign costumes or something. I mean, that's what people don't realize. When you steal the art, you're also stealing the sort of, even if it's credit or whatever. And the internet, is notorious for just, of course, the internet has also created, especially our younger generation, that most things at entertainment should be free. And then
Yeah.
you can just take, and like anything on the internet is a fair game and use. And I don't think a lot of people put thought in, that there's people behind it. Like you even talking with companies, it's like, yeah, sure, Disney owns this and Disney's a big conglomerate, but there are people who work for Disney that, make their living working for that. I'm not saying if you steal a few Disney things, you're going to destroy Disney. But I mean, in the
Yeah.
same sense, there are people that work for that company. And I have my own issues with corporations and artists um, that I won't get into here. But I think people do need to realize that, if you keep taking this stuff, like eventually you can do enough harm that you're not going to get any more work from the artist. And that's the thing always amazes me. They want, we'll take your stuff, but we want you to keep making more. And I'm like, on what? Sheer love and goodwill? Is this what I'm supposed to be making? So, yeah. I am amazed that it is so hard to get somebody to even buy a $5 comic. I talked about this. I mean, I can't remember who I was talking to about this. Like, I think it was my friend in Portland where I visit. It's like you spend more to go to McDonald's than you would just to buy a comic book. That blows my mind. My comics I sell for $5,
Yeah.
and it's like people like, oh, I don't know, $5. I'm like, you have no problem spending $5 on, like, I mean, to me, like nasty food. I mean, like just food or food bad food. Like you don't. It's not even a second thought. But you can't just buy $5. And I mean, like $5 is like nothing. I mean, technically, with all the amount of work we put into our books, we should be selling these for 20 and 30, which again they do on Kickstarter. Which again, I don't know. I can't tell. Like I do pay $25 for books, and just I can't. What do you feel about that? Do you ever feel like when they sell single issues on Kickstarter, should they sell it for $5? I know if they did, they would be like really hard pressed to make their goal. I mean, I can imagine trying to be like a nobody and
Hard
trying
to
to sell.
say. There's so many different things at play,
Yeah,
and and honestly, it's on such a case by case basis. I wouldn't really know what to say about that. I mean,
yeah,
because I'm really into whatever y'all want to do. I know what I'm doing, and
right.
I try to I don't know really what I feel about it. I mean, I wish stuff was cheaper, but so that I could buy it. But then again, these comics are a lot of work, and it seems like one should get compensated well for it.
Yeah,
The amount of work that goes in, because I've done different kinds of work, and desk work is as hard as any other work there is out there. I don't care what anybody says. I've
oh
worked
yeah,
offshore before. I've worked building air conditioners before. It's physical labor,
yeah, it is.
but okay, you take somebody and you set them in a chair for 12 hours, and make them look at screens and stuff. And you tell me their aches, they don't have as many aches as the other guy that's out there doing stuff, but it's just different aches, you know.
Yeah, it's the same thing. People don't realize.
I've done all kinds of different stuff. I've even been at places, in screen printing where I have printed the shirts. And I've come in just as tired printing the shirts as I have sitting in the desk all day
Yeah,
doing the artwork. So I mean, there is a lot of people think, if you got he's got a desk job, or my dream is to have a
yeah,
desk job. Sir, you don't even know. It's just the same
yeah,
as anything else. Work is work, no matter what you're doing. At some
This
point, it's going to be hard.
this is
So
what's so funny when I see people, oh, you get to draw art for a living, you get to do your dream. I mean,
yeah,
and I'm like, yeah, it's also work. I mean, it's not like it's all fun and games. I mean, there's times where you just got to power through stuff. We've talked many a time, me and my friend, that and I made this sort of, we're talking like, we didn't think like making comic books is not hard. Everyone says making comic books is hard. It's technically not. It's very time consuming. And that's
hmm
where the hard part comes in. You have to weigh how much time do you want to sacrifice from your life to make something that may not get a lot of attention. It
or looked at within 5 minutes and
within five
passed on.
minutes. I mean, it's one of these things where, I mean, anybody can draw any, even if the comic doesn't make sense. I've seen people do stories, but this is kind of like, you can tell somebody who's like, I made my first comic, and if it takes them a long time to make it, that's all you're ever going to see, because they don't have they burn out of the first one. But I think most people who make comics have much more respect the buy comics, maybe.
Yeah, I do.
Um,
I definitely believe that. I definitely agree with that.
it's just like, I know all the work you put into doing this, whether either not whether I like it or not. I know it takes work. And so, yeah, it's hard. I mean, this is the notorious in comics of like the writer artist, where the writer's like trying to find an artist, and all the artists keep flaking because they sit there and like, I want to draw comics. I want to draw. This is a lot of work.
hmm
And I had to sit here for hours and do this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you do. And that's why it always irritates me, when people steal stuff, and just, I don't really necessarily get the whole stealing. I mean, I've had friends that I remember at like living in apartments and stuff, and the money they were earning wasn't adding up to what they were getting. And I
Yeah,
realized, oh, it's because they're stealing all their entertainment. It's like, oh, well, okay. So I don't know. I'd never understood this idea that, I want it. And so even if I can't afford it, if there's a way I can get it for free, then it's okay because I want it. Um, so yeah, that, I don't know. We can go to, that's a whole nother show if you want to talk about Power Damon comics, which I think we've even talked about on Silverline before. Um, but yeah, I think most people, like most of these guys, like, look, if why don't you make a comic and then come back and tell me, how you feel about piracy after that.
yeah, that's true.
you know
Well, that's the thing though, is you really have to be tied to it somehow to really gain a appreciation for it and
yeah,
really be able to see it that way. Because
yeah,
most people are just seeing, these people have enough money, they're making all kinds of money, hand over fist. I'm not. It's not going to break the bank for me to, take this or
yeah.
take that or whatever. That's their thinking. But if they ever were involved in a creative venture, and that happened to them, they would think twice about it.
Oh yeah,
I
absolutely.
totally believe that. But
But
there's, it's one of those things. Is it's just like it comes along with it. The internet has been good and the internet has been evil in
yeah,
some respects. And there's some things that the cat got out of the bag, and that's it, and that's all. And everybody's just gonna have to learn to live with it. And then there's other stuff that I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't police it to some extent. I mean, if somebody's stealing something, you should.
there's only so much you can do. So many of those
Yeah, but
sites where
you
you,
have to keep in mind, like you just said, there's only
yeah,
so much you can do, and if you think you're going to change public opinion about stuff,
yeah.
even with true arguments, it's just not going to work.
No.
You know,
I know most of the torrent sites and stuff where people take these things are hosted in other countries, not America. So even if they were to catch these guys, what could they technically do?
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So it's one of those things. I will say that if people, some way, I don't think people ever destroy comics as an art form. I don't really think that would happen. I think there's too much of people who just enjoy the art form. But if you do enough that comics aren't being as made and mass produced, or people are making money, so you don't do it as much, you will start to affect all entertainment, especially movies. People don't realize how many movies are based on comics, not just superhero movies. So many movies, like everybody I talk to, like, oh, they're coming out with Why the Last Man. Yeah, that was a comic. You know, they're coming out with
Mm-hmm.
Sandman. Yeah, that's a comic. So many things. I'd say 75% of all the stuff that comes out in the streaming and media, whatever, all started as comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And so people don't realize, like, comic books are the breeding ground for these ideas to try them out. And
Well, that's the
so,
good thing about comics is because a lot of times you've got a very small crew,
yeah,
whereas there's not control groups and think tanks. There's not,
yeah,
well, let's put it before this audience and see how it does, and then that'll
yeah.
tell us whether we should go with it or not go with it. And even though we've already spent thousands and thousands of dollars, even millions sometimes,
Yeah.
and that decides. And see, there's just so much red tape and stuff. Creativity just gets strangled because there's so many voices and so many groups involved and all that kind of stuff. But then you have comics, and you've got the writer, and then you've got the artist, and they're and maybe a couple other people, maybe, if that are kind of putting their input on it, and it just it gets done.
Yeah.
And it's usually, that's creativity. And
And there's
you
more
just
people.
can't do that with movies. You can't do that with, and that's why
No.
they're swiping stuff from comics.
Yeah. Especially if it finds an audience. You're able to try. I mean, in comics,
Yep.
your imagination is really the limit. I mean, you can do anything you want, and you can do different things. Like, if you're trying to make a movie that's completely original, it's not going to happen. I remember there was an actor talking about that, even in just the context of movies, how expensive they are to make. He's like, somebody's like mentioned a movie, and he was like, this guy said Goonies. He's like, would that be made today? And he's like, no, wouldn't it be made today? Because they wouldn't take the chance on an unknown property. They just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, like Super 8, I wouldn't have thought that Super 8 would have got made. Well, not even just Super 8, but
yeah,
movies like Super 8. It's only because certain people were tied to that, certain names, that they even,
even pulled it out. Yeah,
yeah, gave it
yeah.
the time of day.
And so it's sad. This guy was talking to just about how, like, we've been mining these old properties from the 80s and even 90s. That's what people don't realize. Like, when we run out of stuff to mine, like, where we're gonna stop at? And comic books is it. I mean, if you're not willing to take a chance to try something new in movies, uh like do another, like, Indiana Jones type thing or whatever, like something unique, then you're gonna have to start testing those unique ideas in some other medium, and that's comics and stuff.
Yeah.
But of course, the less people read comics or steal them, they're not going to know. So if everyone steals comics and the comics don't sell, then you never know if that comic was a hit or not. I guess, unless you can find some way to track how many pirate it. I'm not saying people don't. I mean, people do pay for comics, but that's kind of hard. The Walking Dead was just a random comic book. Not like there hadn't been a comic book about zombies, and that thing just took off.
Yeah.
Who knows why? But if you came up, like, I can't imagine them coming up to anyone on television and be like, we want to make a zombie TV show about people just living in a zombie world. They'd be like, no, get out of here. No, we can't do that. The comic was popular enough. They saw money in it, so they did it. And
Yeah.
so it is, the more expensive this stuff gets to make, the less chances they're willing to take. The same thing in video games. This is why independent, lower budget stuff, and comics are low budget. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to make them, except your time. I guess,
Yeah.
but it's so I'm always amazed how many times people tell me about shows they're interested in. It's like based off a comic, and I'm like, really? And I'm like, yeah, you have no idea. You think comics are just superheroes. You have no idea what has been out there for years and years. And stuff. I'm like, why the Last Man is coming out? It's like, that was made in what, the early 2000s, late 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, these things have been around for years, you know. And so, and same thing with book authors and stuff. I mean, Jurassic Park wouldn't be here, without Michael Crichton. So I mean, these are areas to test. So I don't know. That people just I'm always amazed. I do know that movies are the lowest bar entry for a sort of it like you have to read a comic or read a book. Movies you have to sit and stare at it. So it's a
Yeah.
very low entry bar to enjoy that sort of medium. And it's bombastic and it's got the music and everything. And so it's fantastic, but they take a lot to make.
Yes.
I'm
Yep.
amazed. When I watch old movies, even old visual effects movies, I'm amazed at how short the credits are compared to today. It's unreal. Like the credits would go by like that, and then would be a little section with visual
Isn't it
effects and stuff.
crazy? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, you'll sit there
for
for
like
a
10
good,
minutes.
yeah, dude, and it's small print too, like
Yeah,
names just scrolling, 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 and if you have any kind of effects, which most every movie does now,
yeah,
that just adds a whole drove of people to the
yeah.
whole project.
It's crazy. I mean, there's a part of me when I sit for like those after credit scenes they put in movies, I'm just like, well, they really need to put it at the very, very end because these is taking forever to get through these credits. And sometimes I think strangely enough, I don't think it's as big of a deal to have your name in credits as it was before because there's so many people. I think now I could be wrong, but it seems like names are more easier to see or spot out now, unless know that person, um, it's not that big of a deal, I guess. If you're like an art director on a movie, it's like, oh, hey, that guy's art director. What is the art director? It's like 4 or 5 people. I'm amazed that there's not one writer. It used to be this movie is written by this. Now it's written by 4 people, 3, 4 people at a time. It's just like, okay. So maybe we should have comics be that way, be written by like 3 or 4 people and drawn by like 5 people. I wonder how that would work.
Well,
I know.
that's one of the things I love about comics is that, uh, and why I didn't end up going to film school or
Yeah.
something like that is because you know you some people say it as a negative. They say, well, you're in charge of the lighting and you're in charge of the casting, and that's the good thing about it. I get
Yeah.
to choose. I can put a Clint Eastwood type character and a Sylvester Stallone I can put the
Yeah.
Expendables in there if I want to. Just change their names and their appearance just a little. I can do
Yeah.
whatever I want to. I can have it dark and gritty, or
And
I
you
can
can,
change gears halfway if I want to.
yeah, that's the thing is like you can put, massive explosions like in Dragon Ball Z where they're blowing up the world and have it look cool. I think there's also something to be said for still images. Yes, in a
yes,
comic, that you are distilling those images so you can draw much more powerful scenes. I remember much more images and scenes from comics being powerful and stuff than movies. I mean, you still have scenes and stuff, but that sort of the certain images that I have, the famous Spider-Man walking away when he dumps his costume in the trash can. Um, you know, Covers. I don't know if you're a fan of Akira, but Akira has one when he's walking towards his bike. There's certain images and stuff, these are just classic. And you have scenes in movies, but for some odd reason, those images always. I mean, and it could just be the fact that I'm an artist, but I like still pictures. I think still pictures can hit exclamation points in stories better
hmm
than movies can. The only
yeah.
thing we lack is music, and that's the one thing I'll give movies. If somehow we could give, which people I've given soundtracks, but because I always see hear the music and hear the sound and stuff, and of course me and Roland have talked numerous times. I don't put sound effects in my comic. Um, not just this comic. I don't know. I sometimes I forget or I don't know what to write, and I just assume my idea with the sound effects is I just assume people are going to make the sounds up in their head as they go along. I mean, I never read the sound effects. I don't know. Do you read sound effects in comics?
I do, but I find when I'm doing comics, though, man, it really takes up some real estate putting those things on there.
Yeah.
Uh, that's the only
So
problem I have with sound effects. Yeah, so
I
they take
think,
up a lot of room, and if you've already got a dialogue heavy page, and then you're
yeah,
gonna put these big letters in there, It's uh, it's
It
tough.
it's I mean, there's some people like I know Frank Miller puts the sound effects in Sin City. Eric Larson does that in Savage Dragon, and they'll incorporate the sound effects into their art, which look
To
great.
me,
But
it has to be part. It's got to be part of the aesthetic of the page.
yeah,
Like I've seen it done where it just looks like it's been stamped on there, and it just doesn't belong. And I mean, it's gotta flow well with me. Uh,
or be
so I
incorporated.
do like them, but I like them if they're done correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should do more sound effects, I guess. Maybe I should do an entire sound effects comic just for Roland. I'm sure he'd enjoy that. That he's always giving me a hard time about it. I don't know. I asked my friend too. His name's Juan in Portland. Do you like sound effects? He's like, no, I just
I've
never
seen.
really bothered with them.
I watched a show. Oh man, these guys are pretty popular. I can't even think of the name, but they were talking about this same thing. There was a couple on there that they said they didn't do sound effects. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a uncommon thing.
No, it's
There's
just yeah.
you know
But
what? It was the infinity equation. That's what it was. And they have a comic book artist on there. They have a toy maker. And they have like other guys, collectors and stuff like that, and they're talking about comics. And it was the comic creator that was saying that he didn't do sound effects.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something that just is like a personal preference.
I think
Um,
so. It's kind of like the other night we were talking about people writing stories, and some people write stories out of their head because it's really cool and it's a cool concept and they want to
yeah.
build on that. And those really make really good stories. And then you got this other guy over here who, what do I want to say? And then he makes a story to go with it, and it's all stitched together. And it may even be pretty good, but by the time I get to the end of the story, oh, well, all this time I've been
Preach to.
yeah, exactly. They're trying to subliminally, not so subliminally, win me over to some junk that I don't even, I don't believe in or care about.
It's funny. This Galney story does have kind of a message in it, but it was something that grew
Well,
out of
and
making it,
and
and it
I'm
was
not
more the
saying that
character.
that's a bad thing
Oh
every
yeah, but some
time.
people don't like it. I
And
mean,
it's not bad to drop messaging in there. And I can get over some messaging. I don't mind it, because I mean, heck, I've been watching any media that you've watched in the last 10 years, holy moly,
yeah,
has been nothing but message ridden stuff. So I mean, I can deal with it to an extent,
I think it's
but like
better.
when you ruin the whole end of a movie that
Yeah,
I have sat and watched and enjoyed, and then you just messed it up with your ideology or whatever you're doing, that's another story. Just you just sacrificed a good story that you probably got somebody else to write just so you could put your little thing in there. And I just think it's a tragedy. But some people write like that, and sometimes it's not bad. Sometimes they're saying something really good, but sometimes they're not.
I just think also just it works better if instead of them preaching to the audience, is that the character learns the lesson for himself. Like it's a lesson he learns that personally affects him. Um, you know, uh, the classic, Spider-Man responsibility,
Yeah,
being responsible. I mean, that was something he learned personally himself, and then people can take that and attribute it to anything in their life that they may see. But it would be completely different if all of a sudden Peter Parker basically did this big speech about responsibility and responsibility to citizens. It just wouldn't have the impact. The impact was that it affected him personally. And I
hmm
think and when people do that, when it affects your characters personally, people relate more than if the characters make some big speech, which this is what happens a lot and then you see tons of people break characters, having them do things that they wouldn't do simply because that's what they think they should say,
yeah,
even though
plot
that's what they wouldn't
devices.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's suddenly make this character. Let's take away all of the progression that he's had in the last, I don't know, whole movie or
Yeah.
last few comics, and let's just make him dumb for just a few minutes so we can drive the story forward.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's been it's weird because like there's a certain, language and certain way people speak that they'll start to put in people's mouths. And that could be like, a common way people speak or whatever, what people is acceptable to speak. And like, I mean, whether you agree political correctness, it would be definitely be weird to see Wolverine start shouting political correctness things. That would be something that would be like, wait, what? Like, because it's just who he is. So when you have people like that who break character and start spouting certain things that they wouldn't, that go against their views, it just
mhm.
seems weird, and then it just breaks you out of the moment. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
well,
I also believe though it is a fundamental difference in the creative process that they have versus the other way as well.
yeah,
I think they start out that way in the creative process, and that is what their creative process is.
yeah,
Whenever I started doing art, I saw it as this looks cool, this looks awesome, and I want to do this, and I want to make it look awesome, and I want to do things and make it look awesome, and I want other people to see it and say, "Man, that's really nice," and
yeah,
and what a neat idea, not for pats on the back, but just so we can share something cool together and to do something a little different. And that was my thinking. But there's
yeah.
another artist just like me somewhere who is, I want my art to change the world. You know,
That that's
you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
They're just like I'm that way. There's somebody out there that's saying, I want what I write to change the world. I want to change minds. I want to open up hearts, and that's a great thing. But at the same time, I, as a person, when I'm going to consume any type of media, I'm wanting to be entertained. I,
right,
you know, I will learn my lessons from my mother, my father,
yeah,
whatever. And I don't, and like I say, I don't think it's a bad thing every time. It is not. I love morals being put into stuff. I mean,
yeah.
and I try to sprinkle those in what I do as well. But for the most part, I'm doing this for entertainment's sake, not really to change the world.
Well, the
Sure, it'd be
thing
nice
about
if it was, but
the change in the world thing is, when I see so many comics that are spouting certain ideals or whatever, most of the time the way that look of the comic, the visuals are usually only attracting one crowd, and that's usually the crowd that's already converted. So you're preaching the
exactly.
messages
Yeah.
to the people who already agree with you. So you're not really doing anything. And so, and so, I mean, it's like if you're preaching certain topics, like if you're preaching, let's just say certain topics on one side of the fence and expect somebody from the other side of the fence to come read your stuff, probably not. He's probably not
Yeah.
going to. He's not going to see it. It's not because he hates it. He's just like, oh, that's just not my thing. And so, and they're like, well, why isn't this changing the world? I'm like, because the people you're trying to convert are ignoring you.
Yeah, I just don't think that I have ever pushed up to, and I don't really know of anybody that personally that has ever watched a movie and been like, "Oh my goodness, this changes everything."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, oh man, I've had so much crazy, stupid thinking, for all this time.
And then you're going to
And
hear it and it changes you. Yeah.
yeah, now I will say this though: you take a movie like The Matrix, cool concept, cool idea. There was
Yeah.
people who walked out of that and they were like, wow, that's really interesting that this could really be like
Right.
some big simulation. But see, there again, you had people who were like, they weren't trying to say, hey,
Mm.
we are in a simulation.
It was just
Wake
proposing
up.
an idea.
They were just like,
Yeah.
isn't this a cool idea that this is possible that we could be? Wouldn't it be cool if, you
Right.
know? So yeah, I mean, but however people, everybody's different. Everybody likes different
Yeah.
stuff, and I have to say this little part. I like my way, and you like your way, and you
Yeah.
do your thing. I do my thing, and
Yeah, I think there's room for all of it.
there is.
And I
And there's
think,
people just like me. I'm a visual person. When I look at comics, there's other people who are story driven,
yeah,
and they like to have a decent art, but it's not an in game
there's
thing
many
for them.
there's many popular comics that people love that I look at the art and I'm just like, I just don't get it.
Yeah,
I
how does
just
that
don't get
sell?
it. Yeah, how does that
And then there's other people who probably look at them like, man, this comic looks really good, but man, the story's awful. How did it get
Yeah,
this far? And I'm
yeah.
never I'm not like that. I'm like, wow, this looks really cool. I'd buy this just to look at it, all day. you know,
It's
but
strange enough. Yeah, like Saga is one. I tried Saga. I mean, it's okay. The artwork is not the most amazing. It's competent, but it's nothing that's just going to blow you out of the water. And people love that. And that's just story driven. So yeah,
yeah.
there's certain things that'll win on story alone.
Well, it is now. We've come down to our time, and this is the point in the episode where we talk about where we can be found. We are cranking everything down or shutting everything down. Mr. Aaron, where can people find you? I've been running the banner all
Um,
throughout the segment.
they can find me. You can find me on Facebook at Humphreys Illustration, Aaron Humphreys. Type it in, you'll find me. My Instagram handle is now Humphreys Illustration, one word. I've changed it. It took me a while to get new business cards, and now I have it on my new business cards. So, and then my Goblins comic is on Webtoons, and I hope to be posting that soon. I've had some other stuff get in between that, so hopefully that'll come back. And then I will be at the Rose City Comic Con in Portland this coming weekend, the 10th through the 12th. So you can find me there and buy my stuff. You can buy all the physical stuff instead of reading it online. So there.
Awesome. Well, I'm Quentin Bedwell, and you can find me on Facebook with that name, Quentin Bedwell. You can also find me on DeviantArt, QJB, GameCrafter.com, Relic Quest, and Instagram as well. I don't usually post on there, but sometimes I do. I try to keep up with the social medias and the interwebs, but mainly I'm just working a lot, and I do what I can. But you mainly find me on Facebook, and so I enjoyed everything we talked about, and I really enjoyed watching your artwork.
My
I
coloring.
love to see how other people do stuff, because we all do it different, and
Yeah,
it's
I'm
really
actually
cool
coloring
because the way that works.
because, like, I watch Roberta color. She colors completely different. I'm
I
literally
know,
just
I know, right? Yeah.
it's a coloring book. I'm like just coloring in the lines, as weird as it is. It's
And
actually really fun.
another thing, I don't really do it the same way every time.
Yeah,
Sometimes I change things up, and but watching them, man, it's like watching a pro just
yeah,
go. It's everything. Whenever I pick something up and try to learn something that professionals are doing, that's what they're doing, and I'm
yeah,
just doing whatever I'm doing. I'm
yeah,
doing a little bit of that, a little bit of this other thing, and whatever gets it done. But uh, I enjoyed the show tonight, and Brother Tim, we hope to have you back next week, and I'm pretty sure he will be, and he'll be moderating. And
yeah,
sorry if I didn't see your Facebook comments. My phone went dead, and I didn't even realize that I was looking back and forth over there, and then it was gone. So if we missed any, we'll get them on the flip side. But that's pretty much all for us on this 8th day of August 2021. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Aaron?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. Well, everybody, have a good week. Have a good night. And make mine
And Silverline.
Silverline.